my name is Macy, and today I'm presenting Protecting Teens, the case against opioids and adolescent pain management. Addiction is all-consuming. It affects our relationships, our mind, our body, and even our eating habits. First, I would like to begin with a cautionary story about a kid named Nick. When Nicholas Sheff, a now activist for substance abuse was growing up, he was described as creative, intelligent, and sensitive. At age 11, he started using recreational drugs like marijuana. What started out as just having fun became Nick's new life. He was led down a dark hole, causing him to disregard his studies, destroy his relationships, and damage his health, all to feed his growing addiction. Nick's struggle with substance abuse raged on into his adulthood. He had been enrolled at the University of California at Berkeley, but could not finish his freshman year due to his struggle with addiction. He entered his first rehab facility at just 19 years old, but soon he'd find himself a frequent flyer of these facilities, never quite seeming to be able to get his addiction under control. At rehab, it would feel like it was inevitable that he'd start using again, until he changed his outlook. Nick began using his time at rehab as a lesson. He would find the right thing to work for him, and when he got out, he'd use it. And it became the time measuring in between his rehab facilities that grew him the most. Nick was finally drug-free and began writing about his experience. As of January 2024, Nick was 12 years sober and enjoying life. While some of you may view this story as a tragedy or just that, a story, it is important to note the pain and sorrow Nick faced because of his addiction, and the awareness we need to bring as Christians to that. Now, some of you in the audience may be wondering, there was no mention of a doctor prescribing opioids, and you would be correct. The reason is that Nick's story is widely known, highlighting the pain and struggle with addiction from the family's perspective. Some of you may know the movie Beautiful Boy. It highlights Nick's struggle with abuse, and he also goes on to write memoirs and books about his experience. Furthermore, if Nicholas, like other young kids, can get addicted to opioids without a doctor prescribing them, why should our doctors add to the problem of why American teens are addicted? In 2023, a United States survey on drug use and health stated that 48.5 million people are struggling with drug misuse and are currently on the painful path Nicholas is on. Before we continue talking about why doctors should not prescribe opioids to teens, I would like to begin talking about what opioids are. Originally, opioids stem from opium, which is found in a poppy flower smoky sap. Opium was then taken into different companies, and scientists began experimenting and researching on them, just to create a more controlled drug specifically for pain management. Companies were catching on to the booming market of opioids and started creating their own drugs. The Bayer Company with heroin in 1898 and Purdue Pharmaceutical with OxyContin in 1996, and those are just to name a few. By 2021, over 100,000 deaths by overdose had occurred, all because of illicit drugs. Opioids are addictive and similar to a Venus flytrap. First, they trap you. Then, when you realize the pain you've caused and that the drugs have made you cause, it is painful to leave or to withdraw. Sometimes, when going through withdrawal or detoxing your body from the constant use of drugs, it becomes too dangerous and can turn deadly. Symptoms can be anything from sweating, vomiting, or yawning to full body tremors, rapid heart rate, and bone and joint pain. No matter the case, opioids don't let go easily. The first reason I'd like to bring up that opioids should not be prescribed to teens is because of the effects they have on the body, the physical, the brain's development, and the mental health. The period of adolescence is a critical stage for behavioral and brain development. It's a unique phase that is sensitive to numerous environmental changes, and drugs greatly affect that. Opioids stem from the brain. They attach to the brain's receptors and block pain signals from releasing into the body. Because of this, drugs can cause long-term behavioral dysfunctions such as difficulty managing emotions, impulsivity, and many problems with relationships and social interactions. From drug use, people's mental health also takes a toll. It doesn't matter whether you're taking drugs, withdrawing from them, or know someone who's doing either. The psychological aspects are often too much for people. Opioids can cause high highs, but also extremely low lows, similar to bipolar disorder. A constant use of drugs has been known to cause anxiety and depression. It becomes an unending cycle. People use the opioids as a way to manage their feelings or escape from them. Teens are no different. Not only are their brain's developments and mental health affected, but also a person's physical body. Opioids have been known to cause constipation, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, sleepiness, and sleep problems. It affects your lung and heart health, along with weakening your immune system. Cardiovascular changes often occur, like slowed heart rate, low blood pressure, and they can even cause heart failure and cardiac arrest. Diseases like pneumonia and tuberculosis are often easier to contract because of the weakened immune system and the susceptible lungs. The second reason doctors should not prescribe opioids as a way of managing adolescents' pain is because there are other good quality alternatives. The first being physical therapy, second are NSAIDs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and third being a more holistic approach. Studies have been done proving the effectiveness of physical therapy. One study showed that patients who started PT when an injury was in its earliest stage reduced the need for opioids to cope with the pain. Not only that, but PT builds healthy habits and strengthens affected areas. If a student athlete were to have to undergo a painful surgery and recovery, PT is often recommended, but doctors will still continue to prescribe opioids for that instantaneous fast relief, and PT is often done at home. Opioids are an easy way to reach for the instantaneous pain reduction. Some people overlook that NSAIDs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and Tylenol, just because they may not work as fast or strong enough. When taken consistently or recommended by your doctor, these drugs can decrease pain as well as opioids. They just don't work the same. NSAIDs block enzymes that contribute to inflammation, pain, and fever. These drugs can be used to treat a wide variety of pain, and overlooking them would be naive. Furthermore, someone can't become addicted to NSAIDs. Although with any drug, overdose can occur, with these specific drugs, the effects are much less severe. It could be something as bad as a stomach cramp, or a massive headache, or vomiting. It is uncommon that they lead to death. Another alternative is a more holistic approach, or natural remedies. There are creams and essential oils to help ease muscle and joint pain. In some clinical trials, rosemary has been proven to help treat headaches, muscle and bone pain, and seizures. It was further proven to help people going through withdrawal. Another study showed that cloves were more potent than an anesthetic drug called benzocaine, which is used in dental offices when pulling teeth. Hot and cold therapies have also been known to help musculoskeletal injuries that affect the muscles, joints, bones, ligaments, and tendons. The heat increases the blood flow, metabolism, and the elasticity of tissue. Conversely, the ice or cold treatment reduces soreness, swelling, and muscle spasms. Both have been proven to be effective in different ways. The third reason doctors should not prescribe opioids as a way of managing pain is because of the long-term ineffectiveness of opioids. Adolescents addicted to drugs are more likely to continue using into adulthood. One of the studies looked into a certain number of high schoolers aged 18 and categorized them into 5 different groups. The 5th group being, and these were all determining the severity of substance abuse. Of that number, 12% of them were classified as having severe substance abuse disorder, or the 5th and highest category. The study followed up on kids into their adult lives consistently at intervals. And from that original group, 54% of the teens presenting 2 or 3 symptoms had 2 or more symptoms of substance abuse disorder in their adulthood when they were 50 years old. When looking into treatment plans, the risk of taking opioids is often greater than the benefits. Studies have been shown that in the long run, opioids often have adverse effects. And studies conducted on patients after low-risk surgeries, 44% of them who were receiving prescription of opioids within 7 days of the procedure became long-term users in the first year. This is compared to people who were not prescribed opioids in the first place and yet still managed their pain. What this study was proving was that painkillers are addictive, and they do have long-term effects. Considering all aspects, opioids are a long-term struggle, not a solution. Furthermore, our bodies are incredible and can do wonderful things, one of which is adapting to our climate. When opioids are taken consistently, our bodies build tolerance to them. This means that when taking the same dose every time, it doesn't have the same effect on the body. Your body becomes used to the dose, and over time will need more drugs. What also happens with tolerance is cravings. The body craves the drug to the point that it thinks it cannot live without it. Drugs decrease the need for some of our body's natural functions, like endorphins. In conclusion, opioids should not be prescribed to adolescents as a way of managing pain for 3 main reasons: the negative effects it has on the body, the fact that there are other good quality alternatives, and the ineffectiveness of opioids in the long-term situations. In the reasons previously stated, it has been proven that the risk of taking prescriptions outweighs the benefits of receiving the opioids. Seemingly, when prescribed opioids to manage pain, it becomes a long-term battle with not only the injury, but also with the addiction. In today's society, people often think that taking away what people are addicted to will solve the problem. If you think about it, teens, your mom often says, "You're on your phone too much. I need it, or you can't have it anymore." Well, in this instance, the phone is less addictive. It still applies to drugs. You can't just say, "Stop taking them." It's not that simple. People's bodies need to detox from the drugs they've been consistently taking. Doctors should stop prescribing opioids to teens, not only because of the effects, but also for our teens' future. Addiction leads into adulthood, and knowing that, doctors should strive to protect their future and ensure health throughout our teens' entire lives. The pain can be managed in other ways, and doctors should find methods that they find helpful and useful, and they should recommend those instead of opioids. Parents should also do research on their kids to help in whatever way, like finding alternatives and asking their doctors about those alternatives. But ultimately, by fostering awareness and advocating for personalized care, we can take meaningful steps to reduce the risk of opioid misuse and ensure a safer, more informed path to recovery for our teens. Thank you.
Good evening. So I think I wholeheartedly agree with your thesis topic that addiction is bad and it's a very bad thing to have to deal with. But a lot of the studies you cited in the paper had to do with long-term care, had to do with people who refilled their prescription for multiple years. And I think clinically we all kind of know that leads to addiction. There was a number you cited where 0.06 of 12 to 17-year-olds were addicted to opioids, which means that 99.4% of 12 to 17-year-olds are not. How many of those have had an opioid for one-time pain management and never became addicted? how many people have used an opioid and not become addicted? Do you have any research on that?
I have. My topic, I think, is more about managing pain, so like an ACL tear or something of that sort. I will say personal experience, I got my wisdom teeth removed and I did take an opioid to recover, and I am not addicted. But I will say that in your case, a lot of teens aren't addicted because it's that one-time use of an opioid, and their body can't become addicted to it because it's just that one time. So in the case of managing pain, I feel like that's in a more long-term situation, and so that would be consistently taking the drug, and that is kind of where my thesis lies.
Good job, Macy.
Thank you.
So when you say, can you give some examples? You're not saying you can't ever use opioids to treat. What examples of long-term management are opioids being prescribed to adolescents for?
So like ACL tears, I know one of my classmates at a previous school, she got an ACL tear, and so she had to get surgery on it, and so she had to do physical therapy, and she was prescribed opioids for that. And so in some instances, injuries mainly correlated to sports injuries. They're often prescribed over time, and people often become addicted because they want to get back out on the field, or they want to have a chance to play, a chance to get a scholarship for college, and so they'll take those as a way of managing them.
What's your time for long term? How did you define that?
I have not defined that in my thesis.
Okay.
I feel like a year would be a good time, as the studies show that after a year of that use of opioids, that the people were addicted. The participants in the study were addicted.
Anyway,
Okay, one more for you. So we talked about some of the other various things out there, Tylenol, NSAIDs, physical therapy, mental strength, whatever it is. Everyone's body's different. Some people respond to things differently. What happens when the only thing that's going to manage your pain is opioids?
In most of the cases I've reviewed, that's not the case. So for the studies that I've researched, they haven't had a problem transitioning to that, if that makes sense. And so in the case of someone's body reacting differently, I think opioids aren't the only solution, and I think finding what works for their body is best. And I think if opioids do work best for the body, that taking them in low doses, of course I'm not a doctor, but taking them in low doses and very sparingly when the pain is active. Instead of, I feel like today I'm going to get some pain, so let me take it in the morning.
Anything else?
all right.
Good job. Thank you.
Guys.